Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, so get ready to get triggered.
Now it's good?
Now
Okay,
we're good.
cool.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect. We're
Okay.
back. Crisis averted.
Okay.
Breathe, Elliot, breathe.
That word's not in my vocabulary.
We want to thank
Hey.
Elliot for using his technological abilities to
See,
fix the
because
show.
I don't know what's going on, but like I
So-
always got to be in the studio like the day before because some people are messing around with the studio. Just saying. Anyway, next topic, which is Gord Downey.
Yeah.
So Gord Downey passed away, and I personally didn't listen much to him. But have any of you
definitely
guys?
have.
Sorry,
You definitely have.
have I though?
Like, there's like lots of songs that like you don't know about that you just hear. Is like, have you ever heard the songs like
At the 100th
yeah,
Meridian.
at the 100th Meridian,
At
that
the
song's
100th
so good.
Meridian.
or what's the other one?
The Great Plains.
Fireworks,
begin.
Fireworks.
Caucasian.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many
Wheat
classic songs that like.
Kings.
The only shame about Gordie Howe is Gord Howie.
No, Gord
Gordon.
Downey.
Gord Downey.
I'm confusing them with
With the hockey player.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, I can't really talk too much about him though. But like, he's like, if you actually like take the time to listen to his music, like, it's extremely well. It's like extremely well written, and it's a shame that he only got publicity in Canada. Like, he didn't really sell that many albums.
Well,
in the United
I mean,
States
what they
and
say
stuff.
about Gord Downey and the Tragically Hip in general is that they are a Canadian legend, but they're also our secret,
Yeah.
and that's part of the charm.
Yeah.
And
It's a Canadian thing. You know?
Yeah,
And I
they called
think-
him the Terry Fox of modern day.
Yeah, and I think that's why part of why I love them so much. I mean, their music I think is absolutely fantastic as well. Now, lyrics usually aren't something I pay attention to too particularly much. I'm not that much of a lyrics guy, not as much as I used to be. I'm more just big on the music. Lyrics can be awful, lyrics can be great. It doesn't matter to me, at least in the context of rock music. That changes a bit when it gets into hip-hop. But anyway, the lyrics in the Tragically Hip songs are just so fantastic, so well written. You've got a song like Bob Cajun, which is a classic cottage song about cottaging and, just about, having a good time. But really, the lyrics are also about the 1933 Christie Pitts riots, where they had neo-Nazis who were trying to lynch Jews in Christie Pitts Park in Toronto. And the RCMP had to come in and stop that. And so it's, they've got masterful, metaphorical lyrics like that. And that's part of the reason why they're so fantastic and such a Canadian treasure.
Yeah, I never really appreciated the Hip until they died, until Gord Downey died, and until like the last about year and a half, where they sort of brought the Tragically Hip into light. But when I was a kid, I had a friend that lived on my street, and I would carpool home with him every day. Or like I wouldn't carpool home with him. His mom would pick us both up, and his mom was really big into Canadian music, so she'd play the Hip, she'd play Rush, she'd play
Rush is really good too.
the Guess Who, like the whole way home. So the Hip was a big part of like my life as a kid, and I didn't even know it. And I didn't know who was the Hip. Like she'd say, "Oh, this is the Hip. Oh, I love this song. Oh, this, that." And I'd love listening to it because it was more like the fun of like jamming out in the car on the way home.
Yeah.
And when I would listen to a lot of the Hip music that they would play, I would hear a lot of the songs, and I would remember the car ride home. And seeing like I like to make fun of Justin Trudeau a lot, but seeing him cry about Gord Downey's death actually made me really sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really emotional just seeing like even the flashback to him embracing Gord Downey at the final concert in Kingston. And I think that we as Canadians miss out a lot on our own folk heroes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we don't get enough of them.
We
don't
tend to focus a lot on like American culture, and
yeah,
American
or like
music and
Ryan
Hollywood.
Gosling's Canadian, Mike Myers Canadian. Like that's great. I love them both. But like, people like Gord. I think that they're sort of what Marshall said, our best kept secret.
Mm-hmm. And there's something so Canadian about them, like Ryan Gosling and Mike Myers. I mean, they're Canadians, of course. They just and I suppose it's different with actors because they are acting out something someone else wrote. However, there's just something so Canadian about the Tragically Hip, and that's just what I love about
Yeah.
them.
It's something that transcends the actual music and the music industry, because we have a lot of Canadian artists that are really big right now in the world. We have Justin Bieber, we have Drake, we have Alicia Cara that's coming up soon, in the come up, Jesse Reyes, Daniel
Elliot
Caesar.
Sears
These
just
are a lot
went
of
up.
Canadian talent, right? And of course, Celine Dion. Of course, she's the first. She's the OG in terms of Canadian artists. But they don't actually capture that Canadian identity.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Celine Dion does, and I think Drake does, but
I would-
Yeah,
otherwise-
those two
No,
do.
But I would say-
Drake captures the Toronto
Yeah,
identity.
you're right.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. It's not the whole idea of
Yeah.
unity. Justin Bieber doesn't necessarily.
No.
No, not at all.
He doesn't do
No.
that in terms of identifying with Canadian stuff like that. We could say Drake, Celine, and
Yeah.
And Gord Downie.
Gord
And-
Downie. I don't want to mess up his
and
name.
Our generation are missing out on that. Like, who was the hockey songs guy's name?
Oh, the
Stompin' Tom Connors.
It's Tom Connors. That's a big one too.
That's
Oh
a
yeah,
good
of course.
one.
I love
Even-
his music.
yeah.
Great song called "No Canadian Dream" about the post-national kind of ideology that afflicts many Canadians, unfortunately. And it's just, I just love these artists who embody
Yeah.
Canada, and it's so nice and so sad to see Gord Downie go.
Well, full disclosure, I only know the hockey song, but I'll get into that. Yeah, that's about it.
Was there any other?
Yeah, there was
recent
just
news?
one more thing. We were gonna discuss the Bill 62,
Oh yes,
which was basically they call it the niqab ban.
yeah.
In Quebec. So let's discuss
Yeah.
that. What are your thoughts on this?
It ties into a bit into our next topic in terms of that. But for me, when I heard the bill, I sort of brushed it off because for me, it's even if I don't, even if I disagree with the niqab or even if I disagree with other stuff, it's unconstitutional in my opinion. I think that you cannot
ban niqab.
to ban niqabs. I think it's 100% unconstitutional. In Canada, we have religious freedom. In Canada, we're a secular country. You cannot institute something like that. And I think that when it goes into full effect, or if it will go into full effect, it will be challenged in the Supreme Court against the Canadian Religious Freedoms Act. So I think that it's just more of a showcase of Quebec's hostility to the other, their fear of immigrants, and for me, it's just very upsetting to see, but I think it holds absolutely no merit.
Now, one problem I've had with it is that everything I read on it seems to say a different thing. I can't get a clear story.
Yeah.
Now,
Of
I
the bill
certainly,
specifically.
thinking on it now, I sound a little silly saying that because I could certainly just go on the Parliament website and have a look at the actual contents of the bill. I haven't done that, so somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm reading some sources saying that there's no niqab wearing on public facilities or property at all. I'm seeing some
Yeah.
saying
From
that
my
you have to
understanding-
take it off to identify yourself, and you
Yeah.
can put it back on.
Yeah, from my understanding, it's the idea behind the Quebec bill is to ban any type of religious not religious expression, but any religious.
That was the
institution.
that was the previous.
the old one.
Right,
That was
so,
the
but,
old
like,
one.
But so then now they've removed the idea of but I think it was also in terms of public institutions. So that included public transportation,
Yeah.
transit and stuff like that. That would include going into the equivalent of Service Ontario, and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. So it's pretty scary that no matter where you go, if there's anything that the government is responsible for, you can't wear that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
clear this up for me. So if somebody wearing a niqab goes into Service Quebec or whatever they have there, do they have to take it off, or do they just have to briefly remove it to identify themselves?
It's more a brief removal
Okay.
than anything, and it's all public services. So, if you were to go on a bus now, the bus driver has a right to ask you to remove your
Okay.
niqab and then you can just sort of put it back on. But I don't think a lot of unions and people have come out against this, and they're all saying they're not going to support it and they're not going to uphold the bill. But it just makes people scared. These women that wear niqabs, it makes them scared, and I think that's the only thing that it succeeds to do.
Now,
Yeah.
I certainly do support the full right to privately discriminate, and I'm not saying discrimination's a good thing. I think that people have to understand that because I support the right to do something doesn't mean I support it morally or anything. But when it comes to public services, I'm a bit on the fence because this woman who is a taxpayer wearing a niqab, does she technically have ownership in these public services? And if so, I would say that she should be fully able to wear her niqab if she pleases.
Yeah.
Now, I understand there are certainly situations in which identifying yourself with your face should be mandatory. And I can see certain capitulations being made for religious reasons. But certainly on a bus, I don't know. Would they expect the same thing of somebody wearing a balaclava?
Yeah, like, you're gonna pay your presto
that's
and
the
then,
problem.
like, just,
Yeah, it's like, hey, how's it going? Okay.
Yeah, and then boom, like,
And that defeats the whole purpose. No, but regardless of being a taxpayer or not, supporting discrimination or not, and I'm not saying you support discrimination, I was just saying it in the context. I think that we have religious freedom in this country. How far removed is wearing the full Orthodox Hasidic clothing and a niqab? Orthodox women shave their head and wear a wig. Are you going to ban wigs? Are you going to ban the knitted kippah, which covers more of the head? Are you going to ban the full rimmed hat? Are you going to ban...
which is the one that Ben Shapiro uses?
No, Ben Shapiro is the regular
kippah.
kippah. The knitted kippah is like... level 2.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know how better to describe it. I don't mean to be crude, but and then, or are you going to ban, for example, Mennonite women that wear the full robe, or nuns that look like they wear?
Well, I mean, I think the issue is strictly covering one's face, and the issues that come with being anonymous. Under a face
and I get that, but like in the winter, you can wear a ski mask.
Yeah, and so what I want to know is, does the same thing apply to balaclavas?
Yeah,
and if it does. And if it's only a brief removal for identification purposes for security reasons, I would support it to a certain extent. Maybe not on buses. On a bus, that seems silly, but in a government office.
But what I don't understand, if this person is enclosed in a room with another woman, completely fine to remove.
Yeah.
So I think there should be some religious accommodation there.
Get a woman. Fine.
Get a woman.
Totally
fine. And do it that way. If you really need identification purposes, then I would say just have a woman staff member assist these women in niqabs and just be done with it. It just shows Quebec's religious intolerance, and it's sort of echoing Quebec's anti-immigrant sentiments from the referendum and throughout their entire...
To me, what's paramount is just making sure that property rights are being completely protected and not encroached upon. And your property is your body.
So you're saying if a business would refuse its service for someone wearing a niqab, then?
As long as property rights are upheld,
you
do what you want with your property. Your property includes your body and the clothes you put on it.
Makes sense. I mean, that's the law, so...
Yeah.
Like you can't argue that. Like,
so let's move on to our main story now. It was a great discussion that we had. We call it a 5-minute recap, but it really goes for like 20 minutes. So.
Yeah, that's fine.
To our main story, ISIS. Now, you may have heard about ISIS referred to as ICE, ISIL, or Daesh. All of these acronyms describe the group in question. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria is the most common one, which it named itself when it captured Mosul in 2014 and became the terrorist juggernaut it is today. They named themselves that to assert their dominance in Syria and Iraq. Now, not only do they control a lot of land, they also have allegiance from different radical Islamic groups around the world, from Afghanistan to Nigeria, who governs their self-proclaimed provinces as well. Now, they've institutionalized slavery and rape of Yazidi girls and have carried out genocide and ethnic cleansing of Christians, Alawites, and other Shiites and Yazidis in the territories they control. They've also been responsible for dozens of terrorist attacks throughout the world, either directly or indirectly. However, they've seemed to have been shrinking with major milestones, such as the recapture of Mosul, a major city in Iraq, by Iraqi troops. In today's show, we'll focus on the future of ISIS and what that means for the rest of the Middle East. Before we begin the questions, remember that we are live on Facebook, so you can live comment on the feed and have your thoughts read live on air. So without further ado, let's get to the questions. First one, how was ISIS formed?
I'll take this one if you guys. So the ISIS has been as a group with its intentions since 1999. It was I'm assuming during the prelude to the Second Iraq War and all that, but the the main sort of ISIS or ISIL or Daesh that we know today formed from the complete U.S. coalition abolishment of Al-Qaeda and the sort of last hardline fighters of Al-Qaeda rebranding and forming together and creating this sort of Islamic State or caliphate, if you will. So these are the leaders of this have been radicalized since the 1970s, since the Cold War, since the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, since this sort of destabilization in the Middle East post 1979 Iran. And I think that and the reason that they succeed time and time again is they have American weapons. They fight using American tactics. They fight in. They know their territory. They fight in desert groups. They hold civilians hostage. They hold aid hostage. And I think that now the whole reason why this topic is being brought into light now is because ISIS has just lost their de facto capital of Raqqa, which is a city in Syria, and after losing Mosul, they've pretty much lost all major territory outside of some desert they hold in both Iraq and Syria, and I think that, for me, that's how they formed, if anybody would like to add or correct me.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing, of course, I think they would have formed regardless of this, and I think U.S. imperialism, and my God, I sound like a leftist, has really contributed to their strengthening, their gaining power, their gaining influence,
the power vacuum,
their ability to recruit. I would wager that taking down Saddam Hussein had a solid impact on allowing them to gain power in Iraq. I do really. It's not that I'm a non-interventionist. There certainly was a time where I was, but I think that U.S. world policing does cause these problems, and it really needs to come to an end.
My God, who are you?
Yeah, I think like the most interesting idea about it is just how there's all these like small little pieces have come together, and like it took so long for it to form ISIS and stuff like that. So like some people, like a lot of people, like to put not necessarily the blame, but like causation that when the downfall of Al Qaeda was coming down, like that's when ISIS like replaced Al Qaeda as the top terrorist organization in the Middle East, and just like on top of that, the instability of like within the region, which has been caused throughout all these different interventions. Like it started off with the Afghanistan war, which like was backed by the USSR and American forces on two different sides and stuff like that. But I think just the more crazy idea about it is just the devastation that they've caused and stuff like that. The fact that there's no, it's like if you think Saudi Arabia is bad as a theocracy, like this is like literally taking that and like making it 1,000 times worse, because like at least like you could like. Yeah, there's no room for any expression or like any other like religious expression that's outside of the Islamic norm, right? So it's like ridiculous.
And only their version of Islam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
the Wahhabi twisted version of Shia
which has
Islam.
like a very dark interpretation of the Quran in comparison to like Sunnis and like other types of Muslims. But what's also pretty interesting is like I was just pulling up some stuff like from a BBC article that was like talking about the fall of ISIS. Here's a pretty crazy picture, but it just shows like the damage that ISIS caused over the past 3 years.
Yeah,
so, like, it's February 2014.
Insane. It's absolutely
so right there.
insane.
So that's the soccer field that they have. It looks beautiful. The neighborhood looks really awesome, like a developed country and stuff like that. And as soon as ISIS comes in 3 years of trying to maintain an Islamic caliphate, it's like the grass isn't even green. Like there's smoke, there's fire. Like all the buildings are destroyed. Like on top of like the military intervention of. Is it the Syrian government and the Iraqi government? Like with like just bombing.
They've both been fighting.
Yeah, they've been bombing like just the territory, right? Which on top of it could potentially destroy like ISIS members, but it also like there's 10 million people that were that were living under ISIS control. So like the civilian casualties are completely paramount. So
it's
ridiculous.
It's crazy the amount of rape, beheading, assassination. The destruction that they've caused is uncomparable in our modern time, and it's the worst thing that has ever happened to the Middle East outside of U.S. imperialism. I think that the hardline lefty in me is wants to blame things like Sykes-Picot, the whole original division of the Middle East. They want to blame oil interests. They want to blame the U.S. But I think that it's all a harmony of corrupt Arab leaders that want to stay in power, ethnic groups that go outside
that think they're superior.
And I mean, there's a lot of blame to be put on the U.S.
Yeah.
There's a lot of blame to be put on the USSR. I think you can't just look at it as one side. And I know you aren't. I know you're just saying,
Like I blame Russia a lot,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to Afghanistan. I think like Afghanistan, at some point was called the Paris of the Middle East. If you look at Afghanistan in the 1960s,
Well, it was a thriving country.
it was a thriving country. There were gardens. There were beautiful gardens. Many of the ancient Mongol biblical gardens are in and around Afghanistan. And now they're just completely destroyed. There are bombs going off weekly. The refugee population in Afghanistan is higher than the actual population of Afghanistan in entirely. And I think that a lot of U.S. motivation in the Middle East itself was because of Russian stubbornness and the idea to pass Russia as this world power. But I think it also has a lot to do with oil. And unfortunately, Iraq is sitting on a lot of oil.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I know I sound like an uneducated person, the U.S. did it for the oil. And I do blame the U.S. a lot, but I also do blame corrupt Arab leaders. I blame a lot of Saddam's government. I blame the Ba'ath Party. I blame a lot of things. In part, I even point fingers at the revolution in Iran that radicalized a lot of the region. So and that even had U.S. Interests at hand. So the U.S. has its feet in many ponds here, and I don't know where I was going with that, but I think that there was a lot that's a lot to blame.
Yeah, it's so important to discuss all the different factors that create it.
So now that all this damage has been done, and there's no going back, what does this mean for the Middle East that ISIS is falling?
Well, I think it's going to be a long road to recovery. I don't know if there is a road that ends in recovery. I would hope there is, and I don't want to be pessimistic because we, at this point, don't know if out of the ashes of ISIS, a new group will rise that is 10 times worse. I don't know, and it's really tough to say at this point. I think that there's a lot that needs to be done in the Middle East. I think that they need strong leaders, and I think that there is going to be corrupt leaders in the Middle East for a long time. Forever.
Sorry, I'm just gonna say it,
and
forever.
that's okay. But what is needed is strong leadership, I think. And I'm not here to say that Saddam Hussein was a good guy, but I think Saddam Hussein would have been the right guy to handle this in Iraq, and I think Assad is the right guy to handle this in Syria. And
but see, that's the thing, though. Like, with the media coverage, they've always referred to Assad as the Assad regime that's destroying.
And Assad's not good. But you have to.
That's fine. But
you have to compartmentalize these concepts in terms of different concepts coming together with different concepts.
Yeah, but as the person who's in control of Syria is what is he gonna do? Do nothing and not try to fight ISIS and try to get even if he does get some support from another developed nation, he has to do something about it, even if you think he's a bad guy or not.
No, and I'm having deja vu to one of our previous episodes where I came out sort of in half support for Assad, and that pains me to say because I don't want to be pro-Assad. And then Elliot was making fun of me that I am saying that I'm pro-Assad, but I'm not, and that's a disclaimer. But again, I come from a Christian Arab background. So the Assad regime comes from an Alawite family, minority Muslim, minorities protect minorities. The Christians in Syria and both Iraq were very, very safe under the Ba'ath Party and under the Assad regime. And now they're being held hostage for ransom. There are mass killings, and they are unsafe. And I know that that's very selfish of me, but as a secular person and as a person that believes in the idea of coexistence, I think that these regimes, as much as they were terrible, Saddam Hussein gassed more than 5,000 Kurds. We know it. The whole world knows it. He was terrible to a lot of the Jewish Iraqis that were left behind after Operation Magic Carpet by Israel during the Gulf War. It's not pretty. It's not a pretty picture, but there's always some good in a leader. A leader doesn't go stay in power
Absolutely.
for nothing.
These are not good people, and I think that it would be terribly disingenuous for somebody to accuse me of saying that I think Assad is good or Saddam Hussein was good.
Yeah, same here.
Because everybody knows that nobody thinks these people are good.
No,
well,
you'd be surprised.
There are people who
You'd
think
be
that. But,
surprised.
when I say nobody, I mean it's not like
no educated person.
it's not like an epidemic of people who think that these are good leaders. But you have to realize that these are, and I mean, obviously Saddam Hussein's dead, but in talking about Assad, he is the best they've got. He has done well as a leader of Syria.
If he didn't
do you
exist,
think the Kurds are gonna handle ISIS any better? Unfortunately, no.
I mean, the Peshmerga is quite a force against ISIS, and I think that they're very much underappreciated. They're a big part. Yeah, that's the Kurdish military, and they're a big part of the U.S. coalition.
But I think the instability that would come with them forming their own state in Syria.
Where do you draw the borders?
And I mean, do you think that's what you want to be doing when ISIS is an active threat to
No,
Syria?
and that's the whole issue, and that's what I was going to get to when Elliot asked us, what do you think it holds for the Middle East? For those of you who don't know, the Kurdish Iraqi regional government just held an independence referendum. The referendum passed, but because it passed, the Iraq national government has now imposed a blockade on Kurdistan and has seized Kirkuk, which is a disputed region between the Kurdish regional government and Iraq, and has now it's been a whole mess with the Kurdish paramilitary groups and Iraq, and it's sort of distracting from the fight against ISIS. So there are two sides of this story. There is one where I've always been in support of Kurdish independence. I think that the Iraqi Kurds are sort of ready for independence. Other factions have not been given the opportunity.
They've been fighting for years.
They've been fighting since the 70s.
Yeah, they've been fighting Afghanistan.
The Peshmerga has participated in most interventions in the Middle East.
Yeah.
But
as a matter of principle, I'm very pro-Kurdish independence.
Yeah.
I just don't think that it necessarily would have a good outcome, especially at this time with ISIS being an active threat. And
it'd be more important to neutralize ISIS first before there
I
would be
agree. And I'm not saying that once you neutralize ISIS, it'll be peace and that they'll be able to have their independence. No. But I don't think that instability is what they need right now.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, do we take away from the fight against ISIS, or do you establish a stronger independent power against ISIS itself? And I honestly thought that I was much more idealistic. I thought that is what was going to happen with Iraqi Kurdistan. I thought they would become this sort of independent body, and they would govern themselves, and they would run their own mission against ISIS in coalition with the regional powers, but that went horribly, horribly wrong. I completely forgot about Kurdish division. I completely forgot about Turkish vested interest, and it's just gone downhill. And I worry about the Kurds in the States, in Iraq, because when everything falls apart, when ISIS is completely in ruins, I think they're next to be purged.
Yeah.
And the Kurds
that's exactly the problem.
But the Kurds aren't just like one particular demographic that survives only in Iraq. Like they're
spread out all over the Middle East.
And in other
Turkey, Iran, Syria, Iraq. Yeah. It's a whole sort of little, conglomerate in the center between all these countries.
And then, another thing that's
related
related towards
ISIS, I don't know if I used that
ISIS
word properly, but yeah.
Another thing related towards ISIS is just going to be the increase of a diaspora of all these refugees that are going to come and try to go to all these developed nations and stuff like that. And it's just going to have what's the word I'm looking for? Like a trickle down effect, not trickle down economics, but like an effect.
Domino effect. I think is the word you're looking for.
On how that's going to affect East and West relations, and stuff like that. So,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, with these refugees planning to go to all these developed countries, what has Canada's response been to this entire situation? Because just in terms of the Yazidi girls, I know the Conservatives have been have been trying very hard to get Yazidi girls to come to Canada. What has the government's response been to the Yazidi girls situation, and what has it been overall to the situation, to ISIS, to Assad, and
I don't know. I think Canada has taken a very sort of idle seat.
Yeah, they've
in the fight against ISIS. They aligned with the United States. We loaned fighter planes. I think I don't think we have any boots on the ground
No.
fighting
No.
ISIS.
And I don't think that we should be involved in the Syrian civil war whatsoever. However, I know that ISIS is a player, an actor in the Syrian civil war, and in that regard, I suppose tacitly we would be playing a part in the civil war by fighting ISIS.
Yeah.
But I think that it's so important to take care of ISIS. I like, and this is one of the reasons why I liked Trump, is take care of ISIS, but no more nation building, no more foreign intervention. I think he's still been pretty good on that. I mean, there's a lot of things that Trump has disappointed me on, but
Well,
there
he
has
did
been
do some like attacks like towards like.
And that was more Yemen, because he's backing the Saudi coalition against fighting Yemen, and Yemen is a complete disaster.
It's a completely different
I'm
ballgame in comparison to ISIS,
I'm completely disappointed in how the U.S. has been treating Yemen.
Yeah.
Yemen is
Like, I
in
remember
ruins.
like we've discussed this before, like how like that was the one thing that like you really did not like of one of Trump's recent actions, like when he got elected.
So when I didn't like it at first when he sent those Hellfire missiles at
the
Syria.
59
Right.
Tomahawk missiles.
And Tomahawk missiles, rather. And, you know, I've come to realize that that was the right thing to do. It was not an attack on Syria, per se. I mean, of course, if that happened to any other country, it would be an attack. But in the context of Syria, it was simply saying, like, you know, you can't be gassing your people.
Yeah.
And I totally agreed with that. I thought that was a good move on the Trump administration's behalf, and I like what the Trump administration is doing in regards to ISIS. And I think that Canada needs to take a more proactive role in fighting ISIS. Now, I say that Canada's role has been inadequate, and I don't know. Maybe I would also be saying that if anybody else were in power, because maybe we're just not seeing a tangible effect. Maybe they are taking a proactive role, and we aren't seeing any change. And that's one of the things when it comes to foreign relations in terms of fighting terrorist groups is you don't get to see the change until you hear the news headline, oh, ISIS is gone.
You know, all was quiet on the Western Front in a way.
Yeah, and so, you know what, it's really tough to say how good of a job Canada's doing because we don't get to see it. We aren't there.
Yeah.
Can we say that they aren't getting much done? Yeah. But can we say they aren't trying or they aren't putting in the effort? I don't know.
No, because, you know, I think that I like Canada's peacekeeper stance. I think that Canada was very smart not to go into Iraq in 2003 under Jean Chrétien.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the best decisions its government made.
As a little kid, I was like,
Yeah.
because I remember like as
I
a-
remember
as a
the
little child,
invasion
like,
of
you still, like,
Baghdad.
you do remember 9/11
Yeah.
because like you just want to ask all the questions to the teachers, like,
Yeah.
what happened?
I don't remember 9/11
I
whatsoever.
vaguely remember 9/11.
I remember just talking about it like in class and stuff like that. But, like,
Yeah.
but it's like it's a blur
Yeah.
memory. Like the more you read into it,
Exactly.
the more you remember. But
Like, yeah.
it's just crazy thinking like, oh, I forgot what was gonna, I lost my train of thought there
About
for a
9/11?
second.
Talking about
never
it.
forget.
Canada fighting ISIS.
Yeah, the fact that Jean Chrétien, that's what we were
Yeah.
Jean Chrétien didn't take any. Was it Jean Chrétien?
Yeah, Jean Chrétien.
Yeah, he didn't take any
He
action
said he would
towards it.
support the United States, but
Because like,
we're not
it's a
going
completely
in.
different
Yeah.
approach to what
Yeah.
George Bush did. Like, he's like, we're gonna
Absolutely.
find the perpetrators, or everyone who was responsible, anyone related to those
Yeah.
people and stuff like
And
that.
I really do like Jean Chrétien. I think he was a
Yeah.
great prime minister. I think one of the best prime ministers.
Like I read like a little
The
book about
Shawinigan
his
handshake.
bio and stuff. Like it's pretty cool and stuff.
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
he-
Aside from the
At the end of
the
his
scandal
term,
that
he
he
went a
had
little
and stuff.
haywire.
Mhm.
He was very isolationist in his parliament, but that's more of a local issue. Side note, I hate George W. Bush.
yeah, I don't
Um,
like him either.
He was the worst president in terms of foreign relations. He has so much blood on his hands, and the Democrats are now coddling him, and they love him
Oh
so
my
much.
God.
Because he-
And
because
I
he
hate it,
criticized Trump?
and I hate it, and I hate it, and I hate it, and I hate it so much.
You know what the worst thing
because
about it is like that young Turks guy. What's his name? Uyghur.
Cenk.
Senk,
It's
Cenk.
Cenk.
What?
Cenk?
It's Cenk with a J.
Cenk.
It's
Yeah.
spelled with a C, pronounced
What's his
with a J.
last name? Cenk what?
Uyghur.
Uyghur, yeah. He's like, this guy always screams about Trump. He's like, Trump's the worst. He's
Yeah.
a racist, sexist.
That's bullshit.
That's
Yeah.
bullshit. And then he goes, he's like, I can't believe in 2017 I'm actually applauding George Bush. Good job, George. I'm like, do you hate Trump that much
Oh,
that you like?
I
you're
wanna
gonna go
swear
against
so
the
bad, but I
Republicans,
can't.
right?
Of course you can.
fuck George W. Bush.
Good.
Yeah.
No, because like, and now like you see Michelle Obama embracing him, and he's at that
So you guys are
gala,
literally
and he's
enemies, like, of
cracking
each
jokes
other.
with Obama, like nothing ever happened. 2003, what's that?
Yeah.
And I don't mind Obama and him getting along. That's not my issue.
I think it's fine if like
no,
they're
but
longer
it's the
presidents
image. Like they
anymore.
did Gallup did a poll, and 41% of Democrats support Judge W. Bush. Do you not remember 2003?
I know it's crazy.
Ridiculous, and like. Okay, sorry. Back to the topic. What's going to happen with the Middle East? I have no idea. The big sort of question mark for me, or what are the borders going to look like after ISIS?
For me, like, it's wondering is like if there's actually gonna be like the more I read into the UN and stuff like
Yeah.
that, the more I realize how like shitty it
Useless
is.
it
How
is, yeah.
useless it.
Yeah.
I used to
Robert
think
Mugabe,
I used
goodwill
to-
ambassador.
Yeah, I used to think like, oh, the UN.
But they
even,
retracted that.
Yeah, I used to think that the UN used to be like one of the, like the strongest like things like to like,
No,
it's like for like world peace and stuff like that. But the more you read into it, it's like
You know the
goddamn,
meme.
like-
You know the meme of that guy washing his car in the rain. That's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
feel like the
Yeah.
UN is.
Oh
like.
yeah.
yeah, that's exactly. What
It accomplishes
we have a
nothing.
saying that in Spanish, like si quieres mojar el agua, it's like if you want to wet water, like
Yeah.
you're a dumbass if you're trying to do that
Yeah.
shit. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So for me, like, Marshall was saying that maybe the Kurdish government sort of screwed up during their independence vote. Now, I don't. Would that be fair to say?
I think so. Yeah.
And I
for
might.
independence? Who?
The Kurdish government
right.
in Iraq
Yeah.
might have. I disagree with that. I think it was no time is better than the present. But for me, like if we're going on that argument, when ISIS completely falls, when the ashes completely settle, all quiet on the Western Front,
Where's that from?
that was the last call on November 11th at 11:11 during World War One. With the last telegram, that's when the ceasefire started.
Good.
Now I'm doing a lot of World War One history, so it's just been running through my head.
Because I
Sorry.
remember.
Yeah, all quiet. It's on the Western Front. So what's going to happen? And that's when all these different regional governments would capitalize on that. So how are they going to carve up the Middle East? So I think that maybe the establishment of a Kurdish state could form. I don't think it'll fly with Turkey, because Turkey is much more stable than the rest of the Middle East, and their borders are much more solid.
It's in that like what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? It's like just in between Europe and the Middle East.
Yeah.
Like it's like isolated and it's
Yeah.
good to like not.
It's
be able to-
landlocked.
Yeah.
It has
exactly.
no allies other than Israel, and Israel's doing that strategically against Turkey because Turkey's supporting the Hamas.
Yeah.
So if the government were to change in Israel, who knows what would happen with that? So I
God
think,
forbid.
God forbid. God, I disagree with that. But for me, I wonder what will happen with the Kurdish population. I wonder what will happen with the Christian population. The Christian divides across these countries are much less hard than the rest of the Middle East. So I don't know if they would even form their own state. I don't know what happened with.
That's interesting though, because like if you look at the previous border between Syria and Iraq before
Yeah.
there was ISIS intervention, like
Yeah.
now like the border's like messed up. Like you can't like you can still see it kind of like it separates with that river. Like,
Yeah, but in Sykes-Picot, they made it a straight line. There are no straight lines anywhere in the world except with the Canada and the United States. And even that was
That's not really a
artificial.
line even,
Yeah,
really.
exactly.
I guess in a way, yeah.
In a way it is, but
it's fairly straight.
yeah. But even then, if you look at a border with Iraq, and if you look at a border with Jordan and Iraq, and in Iraq and Syria, it's straight lines.
Yeah.
Where in the world are there straight lines with ethnic groups and peoples and land and
if you look right here.
yeah. I think I can see that.
Jordan's right there. It's like a massive like diagonal
Yeah.
line that's running through
Boom,
like
boom, 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 boom.
boom. Yeah.
It's like I drew it with my eyes closed.
Yeah, and
like,
it separates Syria and Iraq like
Yeah.
crazy. Like
Yeah.
The problem with these type of borders is they don't necessarily represent the demographics and the people that are living in
Yeah.
the region.
Yeah.
So like where like you don't see like even like it shows right there in like the purple like Iraqi and Kurdish forces, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that they're actually going to be able to get that land.
Yeah.
Once
Exactly.
ISIS gets eliminated, right? So
And like you put Shias and Sunnis in one country and you
they're
think it's
gonna
going to
hate
go
each other,
well?
Yeah.
Like, that's not how things work. And maybe after the fall of ISIS, maybe the divisions will get lessened, and kumbaya, hug the whales. And
But the question is, if ISIS falls, will another group form?
I think it will. I think there will always be instability. I think there will always be vested interest in radical Islam and in establishing their own caliphate and all that. And I think that there was an article that just came out, and I didn't read it, and I just read the headlines, and I'm a huge hypocrite. But the king of Saudi wants to reestablish moderate Islam
Yeah.
in Saudi Arabia, and I don't know how he's going to do that, and I don't know where that's going to come from.
And I don't know if that's genuine. Let's hope it is,
Yeah.
because that would be assuming that does happen.
Yeah.
Let's just pretend it will.
Instead of Sharia law. They wanna,
Well, I mean,
not that they have.
there will still be Sharia, but it'll be a different interpretation.
Okay.
I suppose.
In the more modern
And so
sense.
let's pretend that's actually what's going to happen. That'd be so fantastic, and I think that's. I mean, it's very optimistic to look at it that way, but I would love to see that, and I would love to see other countries in the Middle East go that way because
Secularism works.
Saudi Arabia being the kind of the main power in the Middle East, I think that we could see other countries go that way as well.
Yeah.
But in the end, are we going to see peace in the Middle East anytime soon? No. But ISIS, I do think, will fall, and then
I'd give
near
it the next
future.
10 years.
Yeah,
Personally?
relatively near future.
Yeah.
What, for
And-
ISIS to fall?
Yeah, like completely.
Oh, yeah.
And
so
I
they're
think,
not
like
relevant
no
anymore.
remnants.
I think
Yeah.
that things will get better. Now, when I say better, I don't mean like fixed.
Better relatively.
Better relatively after ISIS falls, because ISIS is a concern because their goals are to take over the world,
Yeah.
as opposed to the Taliban or Al Qaeda, who has
More regional interests.
regional interests.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Even the Taliban denounced ISIS.
hmm
So I don't know what'll happen. I
That's
don't
pretty
know.
funny when extremists are denouncing other
It's like, whoa, those
extremists.
guys are way too extreme.
Yeah.
I don't know what'll happen. I'm worried about minority populations in the Middle East, and I'm worried about how the borders will get redrawn in terms of oil interests and
I'm
resources.
more worried about like how like the UN is gonna like try to like
yeah,
fix the
who's gonna veto
situation.
who? Who's
Yeah,
gonna?
'cause
Who's gonna?
100% Russia's gonna veto
Russia's
some
gonna
things
veto
and-
anything that happens with Syria.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, that was take that out. That was our show. That was actually an excellent discussion. I mean, I didn't prepare many questions, but you guys,
We just let it flow.
you just
Yeah.
let it flow.
That was good.
And I hope our viewers enjoyed that. But that was our show for this week. So thank you to everyone that tuned in and that messaged us live.
we really didn't get any.
We got
like,
some.
we got some
on,
comments.
on some comments
But
on
no
like Gord
questions,
Downey and
but,
whatnot.
yeah.
But next time, a brand new episode of the Raben Report will be coming to you next week. Same day, same time, same people. Have a great day, everyone.